Welcome back to the channel, guys. I am the Ginger Gamer, and today I'm reviewing Resident Evil Village, or Resident Evil 8. The story starts out, you play as Ethan, your wife Mia, and now you have a daughter named Rose, and you have been moved to Europe in a seemingly perfect, cozy, loving home. After the events of 7, if you played it, you know they surely deserve it. Spoiler alert, it does not last, and in typical Resident Evil fashion, it gets crazy really quick. The next thing you know, Ethan is lost in a village looking for his daughter. That's all I'm going to say at this point because I don't want to spoil anything. Resident Evil is still one of those series that surprises me, and I love uncovering everything there is to know on my own, and I want you to be able to experience that as well. I'll start off with the graphics. If you've seen any of the marketing for this game or played the demos, you know this game is a looker, especially on the new consoles and I'm sure on PC. I was lucky enough to get a PS5, even though I had to pay extra for it. Anyways, this game is gorgeous everywhere you look, especially with ray tracing enabled. I know that Digital Foundry said if you want a rock solid 60 frames per second, play with it off. However, I think it adds much more realism and pop to immerse you into the game. And when it's a game like this, you want to be as immersed as possible. I never really noticed the dips while playing anyways. The character models are incredible. And if you've seen Lady D, you know what I'm talking about. You may not know this, but I'm a huge fan of werewolves. Or Lycans is in this case, and I love the variety that's in this game, and it's really well done. I'm pretty critical of werewolf designs in games and movies, and Resident Evil Village I think did something very unique, and they hit it out of the park. One big criticism of Resident Evil 7 was there weren't enough enemy types, and this game has them in spades. There are so many different types of environments in this game that I wasn't expecting. They were all done really well. The castle is for sure a highlight, but that's not the only one. The sound design is incredible. I don't usually play with headphones in games that aren't multiplayer. However, I chose to with Resident Evil 8, and I'm really happy I did. And a little freaked out at the time. I tried to play Resident Evil 7 with headphones, but a few hours in, I ended up taking them off. This game isn't quite as scary in most parts as Resident Evil 7. I wish I would have stuck with it on the previous game, but you live and you learn. The beginning section going through the woods at night and hearing every growl of the Lycans created a great scary and an unnerving atmosphere. This is true throughout the entire game, probably best for the infamous baby house. But if you played with the headphones, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I tried not to look, but I couldn't escape the sound. The 3D headphones that Sony sells also really helped with locating enemies, especially playing on the more difficult settings, as sometimes avoiding a fight was the only way through. The gameplay is a lot of fun, and the replayability is really high as you unlock better weapons and unlimited ammo on additional runs. I can give no higher praise to a game than to finish it and then immediately start a new game and play it through again. I've now beaten 3 times, and I'm considering another run to finish out the trophies. My last playthrough was on Village of Shadows difficulty, which is the hardest difficulty in the game, and I will say that not only are enemies stronger and deal more damage, they are also more aggressive and make you reconsider how you play the game. And if you found more powerful weapons and upgraded them, they do not feel simply like bullet sponges as some games cheap out and do. I recommend to play the game on standard, then hardcore, and then Village of Shadows, as this is how I played it, and if you're wanting to play on the higher difficulties, this is what I would recommend. I tried going straight from standard to Village of Shadows difficulty, but I didn't have enough weapons leveled up to the point where it was doable. The guns feel great, and as you level them up, you really feel the difference. It's not just how they look, it changes how they fire, for example. The fire rate is one of the most noticeable things, as for most weapons, you really have to consider your shots, because you may not get another one. The enemy attacks are varied, and I liked how, especially with the Lycans, that they were difficult to hit and would dodge your shots quickly to heighten the tension, mainly on hardcore and Village of Shadows, as only 2 hits can kill you. With shotguns especially, and more powerful handguns, the weight of your shots are felt as you lay enemies out or shoot weapons out of their hands. I kept thinking that I hope they keep making games like this, as there's so much variety and fun to play. There are large sections of backtracking and puzzle solving, quiet moments that let you live in the world, which I love. Then there's tension-filled horror and also crazy Resident Evil action moments, which if you explored thoroughly enough, you were rewarded for being able to kill every enemy in your way. I hate games where they funnel you into the area and there's nothing worth exploring. All the enemies know exactly where you are. Bottom line, I love this gameplay, and I want more of it. I'm going to give this game a 9 out of 10. And when I go into the spoilers, I'll talk about the reason why the ending I wasn't so crazy about, or at least one of the last boss fights. So at this point, I'm going to go into some spoilers. So if you haven't played the game, please turn the video off. The two things that I really didn't like were the last major area you explore, which is called the factory, and then including the boss fight with one of the main antagonists, Heisenberg. And I wasn't crazy about Chris Redfield's part. The last main antagonist has some sort of telekinetic or magnetism ability. And in a game with werewolves and vampires, I just didn't feel like it fit very well. The factory itself was okay, but the Lycan Den that you fight through just prior to that, I think could have been expanded and could have been the last area besides the main last boss fight. And they could have explored that other than what they did with the factory. The factory for me just had too many samey type areas that all looked the same, and it was confusing, but it wasn't in a good way. It wasn't like puzzly. It was just not good. And the Heisenberg fight where he pulls a bunch of metal scrap together and he turns into this big, gigantic, spider-looking metal thing, contraption, and you fight him in this big machine gun cart, I just thought it felt Resident Evil, because I know they've done crazy stuff like that in the past, but for this game, I just wasn't enjoying it. And when you try to play this is probably the most frustrating part, this last boss battle on Village of Shadows difficulty, as you can't heal yourself. So I did not enjoy it. It took me a couple hours to beat, and I hated every minute of it. And then there's the part with Chris Redfield, and you play as Chris. Right after that last boss fight, Miranda comes, and Miranda's the main antagonist, and she rips Ethan's heart out, and you think he's dead, and then it transfers you to Chris, and he goes through guns blazing almost like a Call of Duty. And I definitely get it story-wise, but I just didn't really enjoy it gameplay-wise. I understand that they wanted to make you feel like Ethan was truly dead, and I really did think that he was. But then towards the end of Chris Redfield's part, you find Mia, which is Ethan's wife, and you had thought that she had died, and then it tells you that Ethan's actually a mold creature, which is what's basically given all these different people different abilities or different things that they transform into, or based off of their DNA and how they react to it. So you get lichens and blood-sucking vampire type enemies and what have you. So that reveal was pretty cool, and for the most part, I really like this game. Again, I mean, I played it 3 times, and I'm considering playing it again. So I recommend it. If you like Resident Evil, pick it up. If you've never played Resident Evil, I would probably recommend, I mean, you could start here, but I'd probably recommend at least 7 first. There's lots of good Resident Evil games. The Resident Evil 1 remake, 2 remake, 3 remake, and here they're making a Resident Evil 4 remake, so you could skip 5 and 6. But anyways, this Ginger right here thinks this game is awesome. Definitely recommend it. And I'll see you next time. Ginger out.